I observed my wife staring affectionately at some stranger, fondling and charming him directly in my presence, so I departed and devised my ruthless retaliation. Be me, 29-year-old Nathan. It started with a dress. She came down the stairs wearing this blue thing I'd never seen before, tight in a way that was new, like it wasn't for me. I was sitting at the kitchen table, half focused on some report for work. When I looked up, something just froze. Not because she didn't look good. She did, but not for me. I didn't recognize the way she looked at herself in the mirror near the entryway. Like she needed confirmation from someone who wasn't there. Going somewhere? I asked casually. Too casually. My voice almost cracked under the weight of the question. Victoria glanced at me with this glazed-over expression. Like she had to scroll through her brain to remember who I was. It's Morgan's birthday, she said, grabbing her coat. Morgan, right? Her coworker who threw 6 birthday parties a year? I didn't say anything. Just nodded and went back to pretending to work. She left without a kiss. She used to kiss me before going to the mailbox. 2 hours passed, then 4. Midnight rolled in like fog, quiet and sticky. I wasn't even pretending to do anything anymore. I just sat there, phone on the table untouched. She didn't text. I didn't call. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want the answer. Then the light from a car swept across the living room window. She came in smelling like someone else's cologne. I didn't say a word. She didn't either. Walked right past me like I was air. Up the stairs, bedroom door closed. The next morning, she was already gone when I got up. No note, no coffee. Not even the usual empty mug in the sink. She hadn't slept next to me either. The bed was untouched on her side. I checked the security app on my phone. She came in at 1:46 a.m. This went on for weeks. Disappearing acts, dresses I'd never seen before. Half-lies spoken with confidence. It's work, she said once, shrugging on her coat. We have to stay late. I said nothing. Watched her walk out the door like I was watching a stranger leave my house. Then came the night I followed her. It wasn't planned. I just couldn't take the silence anymore. She left, and 10 minutes later I grabbed my keys and drove. Her car wasn't hard to track. She always parked a block or two away from her actual destination, like a half-assed spy. That night it was some trendy-looking bar with big glass windows, and neon lights that made everyone inside look like a music video. I sat in my car across the street. Then I saw her. Victoria laughing with him. She touched his wrist when he handed her a drink. Then his shoulder when he leaned in. He said something, and she threw her head back and laughed. That deep laugh she used to save for me. When we watched reruns in bed and pretended we weren't both falling asleep. Then she did it. She brushed something off his shirt. It wasn't even a big move. Just fingers grazing fabric. But it was all I needed. I felt something split open inside me, like an old injury tearing wide. Not rage, not sadness. Something worse. Confirmation. She never touched me like that anymore. Never smiled with her eyes. Never made room in her voice for warmth. I sat there, headlights off, engine humming, heart like stone. I watched them talk. I watched them drink. I watched her forget I existed. I didn't go in. Didn't confront her. Didn't cause a scene. I just sat there and watched my wife cheat on me in real time. And then I left. Drove around until the gas light blinked on. Pulled over. Turned off the engine. Sat in the dark. Not crying. Not screaming. Just existing with this new knowledge. Like someone handed me a brick and said, "This is your new life, carry it." When I got home, I went into her bedroom and opened her closet. 2 dresses were missing. 1 blue, 1 black. Both things she never wore around me. I sat on the edge of the bed, her side, and breathed her in. Nothing. No scent. She hadn't slept there in days. I don't know how long I sat like that. But when I finally stood up, I looked at the mirror above the dresser and said out loud, "You're not crazy," because that's what she kept making me feel like. I was paranoid, insecure, jealous, but I wasn't. I was just right. The next morning, everything was too normal. She came into the kitchen in an oversized hoodie and leggings, hair tied up like she hadn't spent the night touching another man's face. She moved around the kitchen with mechanical ease. Coffee, toast, scrolling her phone. Not a word to me, not even a glance, like I didn't exist. And I played along because that's what you do when your world is splitting open, and you haven't figured out which side to fall on yet. I sat there drinking coffee I didn't taste, watching her thumbs dance across her phone screen. She smiled once. That smile, that private, guilty, delicate curve of the mouth, meant for someone who wasn't in the room. "I thought you had to work late again today," I said too quietly. She didn't even blink. "I do." That was it. 3 words. Cold. Practiced. Final. And I knew in that moment that she thought I'd never say anything. That she was so secure in my silence that she didn't even bother to lie well anymore. but I wasn't silent. Not inside. Inside, I was a storm waiting to hit the coast. That afternoon, I opened her laptop. I've never done that before. Never even thought about it, but something inside me cracked. Trust was a rotting structure now, and I was done pretending it wasn't. The messages were all there, not even hidden, just minimized. Had fun last night. Winky face. Next time we don't stop at just drinks. Miss your hands already. Bradley. Of course. My stomach turned, but I kept scrolling. The thread went back weeks, maybe longer. Jokes, nicknames, photos, complaints about me. I read things that made my hands shake. She told him I was boring, predictable. Said he just doesn't get it anymore. Said she felt alive with him. And then, like a cherry on top of this acid-laced sundae, she said she was going to tell me soon. But he's too fragile. I don't want to hurt him. Fragile. I closed the laptop slowly, sat back in the chair, stared at the wall. The silence in the room had weight, like it knew what I had just read, like it was asking what now. So I waited for her to come home. When she walked through the door that evening, I didn't even look at her. I just said, "We need to talk." She froze just for a second. Then the performance began. "What's wrong?" she said, setting her purse down. With this faux concern in her voice, she had the nerve to furrow her brow, like I was being unreasonable. I didn't say anything. I just turned the laptop toward her. Open tab. Open betrayal. Her face drained of color. It was fast, like a power outage. Then just as quickly, she recovered. "Oh my God, you went through my laptop," she snapped, voice sharp, almost angry but controlled. I didn't answer. I just stared. "What the hell, Nathan?" she said, arms crossed, standing there like she was the one being violated. "You're cheating," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper, but it echoed in the space between us. She rolled her eyes. "It's not cheating, we haven't even." She stopped herself. Too late. Her mouth betrayed her faster than her body ever could. I stood up. "So what have you done, Victoria?" She didn't answer. "I watched you with him," I said, "at the bar. I saw everything. The way you looked at him. The way you touched him. You followed me," she asked. Eyes wide now. Offense replacing guilt like a reflex. "Yes," I said calmly, coldly. "I followed you and I saw my wife wrap herself around another man, like I was already dead." Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "Nathan, it's not what you think." Don't I cut her off. Don't insult me. Don't humiliate me and expect me to swallow lies. She turned away suddenly, pacing like a trapped animal. And that's when the real her started to leak out. "You know what? Maybe if you'd been paying attention, I wouldn't have needed to find attention somewhere else." There it was. The venom. Bradley listens. Bradley sees me. "You walk around like a ghost, Nathan? Like some shell of the guy I married. And yeah, maybe I wanted to feel alive again. Maybe I deserve that." I stared at her. She was pacing in circles now, breathing heavy like she was the victim. "You don't deserve anything," I said. "Not from me." She stopped. "I'm done, Victoria." Her eyes finally cracked. Then she wasn't expecting that. She expected a fight. Expected me to rage. Maybe even cry. "Not this." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not your fragile little husband. I'm not going to sit here while you gaslight me into thinking I caused your affair. You're really going to throw this all away." I almost laughed. "You already did." She stood there, arms limp at her sides, eyes empty now. I turned and walked out of the room. No yelling, no slamming doors, but something inside me closed so hard. I swear I felt the air change. I didn't sleep that night, again. But this time it wasn't because I was waiting for her to come home, or because I was drowning in uncertainty. No, this time it was quiet surgical clarity. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, going over every moment in my head, like it was courtroom evidence. Her smiles that didn't reach me. The new underwear she said was just for fun. The way she started locking the bathroom door when she showered. Every lie was a brick. And I had built myself into a room with no exits. And now I was standing in it alone, with a suitcase full of evidence, and a wife sleeping down the hall, who only looked like the woman I married. At 6 a.m. I packed a bag, not a dramatic one. Just enough. A few shirts, laptop charger, toothbrush. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter, right beside the coffee pot she never touched anymore. I didn't leave a note. If she wanted answers, she could find them. Where I had, hidden between the lies she told so easily. I drove to my brother's place 2 towns over. Tyler didn't ask questions when I showed up. He took one look at me and said, "Spare rooms made up." He always had this uncanny ability to tell when things were broken just by looking at your face. By noon, Victoria had texted, "Where are you?" 10 minutes later, "Seriously, we need to talk." An hour after that, "This is childish. I didn't respond. By 4 p.m. she called. I let it ring. At 5:13 she texted again. If you think this is going to fix anything, it won't. No apology. No remorse. Just blame. That evening, Tyler grilled burgers on the back deck. While I sat there with a beer I didn't drink, his wife Lisa came outside once, saw my face and just gave me the soft knowing look. Before going back inside, "You going to tell me?" Tyler asked, flipping a patty. I told him everything. From the blue dress to Bradley, from the bar to the messages. He didn't say anything at first. Then he nodded, turned off the grill and said, "You're not going back." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, like saying the sun was down or the beer was cold. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. That night I finally slept, and I dreamed of silence. Peaceful, undemanding silence. Not her voice in my head. Not my doubts. Just quiet. The next morning she sent a long message. A wall of text trying to thread a needle. Between confession and manipulation. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You pulled away from me first. I was lonely. Bradley just made me feel seen. We didn't do anything physical until recently. I was going to tell you. She even slipped in. But I never stopped loving you. I nearly dropped my phone. She used the word love like it meant nothing. Like it was a charm she could dangle in front of me. And I'd come crawling back. That was when I realized she didn't want me. She wanted the comfort of my silence. The convenience of my presence. The reliability of a man she could betray and still count on. I didn't reply. Not that day. Not the next. Then she called my mother. My mother told her I had run off after a fight. That I was being irrational. That nothing happened with Bradley. And I was just reading too much into things. My mom called me in a panic. I had to sit there, 29 years old, explaining to the woman who taught me about loyalty that her daughter-in-law had turned our marriage into a goddamn performance, and Victoria was still acting, still playing the role of the misunderstood wife, the victim of a husband who had clearly lost it. It wasn't just betrayal, it was sabotage. She wanted me to doubt what I saw, what I read, what I felt, but I wasn't that man anymore. I called a lawyer that afternoon, scheduled the first meeting. The man who walked into that office wasn't broken. He was done. She showed up at Tyler's house 3 days later. Didn't call, didn't text, just knocked on the door, like it was Sunday brunch, and not the aftermath of a wreck she caused with her own hands. Lisa opened the door, and immediately called for me, like she had a rattlesnake on the porch. I walked into the front hall, and there she was, Victoria in her softest sweater, no makeup, hair pulled back, like she was auditioning for some pity role. I didn't say anything at first. Neither did she. Her eyes scanned the space behind me, like she couldn't believe I had somewhere to be. That didn't include her. "Can we talk?" she said, voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. I turned to Lisa and Tyler, who stood off to the side, watching like referees who'd rather be anywhere else. Lisa gave me the smallest nod. Tyler folded his arms. Outside, I said, we stepped onto the porch. Cold wind. Dry leaves rustling across the lawn. She stood there with her arms wrapped around herself, like the chill was something new to her. "I read your messages," I said, straight to it. "No warm-up?" She flinched but quickly composed herself. "I figured, you lied to me for months. I didn't want to hurt you." I laughed. I actually laughed, short and bitter. "You think saying that makes it better? Like it gives you some kind of moral pass?" She looked away, out toward the street. "I didn't plan for this to happen. Bradley and I, we just clicked." "Clicked," I said, taking a step toward her. "Victoria, you were married. You didn't just click. You decided over and over. Every time you answered his messages, every time you lied to my face, every time you put on a new dress and left me behind." Her lip quivered. "I don't know if it was real or just part of the show. You don't understand what it was like," she said, "coming home to someone who stopped seeing me. You were always working, always tired. You didn't even notice when I cut my hair. You cut it half an inch," I snapped. "You were begging for a reason to feel neglected. You made me into the villain, so you could run off and feel justified." Her eyes flared. "So it's all my fault." "No," I said calmly. "It's your fault, every piece of it." She dropped the act then. Her shoulders straightened. Her expression hardened. "You think you're perfect. You think you've been this amazing husband. You haven't touched me in months. You go to work, come home, stare at your laptop. You don't even look at me anymore." "Because I felt it slipping," I said. "I felt you going cold. I tried to reach out, but you weren't there. You were already somewhere else." We stood in silence. People drove past. Somewhere a dog barked. It was surreal. This quiet moment in the middle of the end. "I don't want to lose everything we built," she said finally. Softly. "Please." I stared at her. "You already burned it down. You're standing in the ashes asking where the house went." Her expression shattered then. She reached for my hand, and I pulled away. And then she said the thing that ended it for good. You're really going to throw away 5 years over a mistake. Mistake, I said slowly. Victoria, forgetting your anniversary is a mistake. Locking your keys in the car is a mistake. What you did was a campaign. Her mouth opened, closed, and then she stepped back like I'd hit her. I didn't say goodbye. I opened the door, walked inside, and left her on the porch. She knocked once, twice, then silence. I watched her car pull away from the upstairs window. She didn't look back. Tyler came in later with a glass of bourbon and didn't say a word, just handed it to me and sat down. For the first time in days, I felt something close to peace. Because now finally it wasn't my fault. Because now finally I knew I was leaving her. The next few days passed in a strange kind of stillness. Not calm. Never that, but a hollow quiet, like a room after the music stops. I stayed at Tyler's, worked remotely, ate what Lisa put in front of me, stared at emails I couldn't focus on. Everything around me moved, but I didn't. Then she started showing up everywhere. First it was the coffee shop down the street. I went in for a black coffee, and there she was at the corner table, flipping through her phone like it was a coincidence. She looked up, smiled like we were old friends meeting by chance. Didn't think I'd see you here, she said. Eyes wide, voice fake light. I didn't reply. I turned and walked right back out. Then it was the grocery store, 2 blocks from Tyler's. I saw her just inside the entrance, standing near the bananas, as if she had suddenly developed a craving for fruit. In a neighborhood she never shopped in, this time she tried to talk. Nathan, please. I didn't stop walking. The third time she parked outside Tyler's house. I didn't go out. I watched her from the window. Her engine running, her hand tapping the steering wheel, like she was rehearsing something. She stayed there for nearly 20 minutes. Then she drove off. That night she texted me, "We need closure, please meet me." Closure. That word again, the favorite buzzword of people who destroy things, and then ask you to help clean up the mess. I didn't respond. The next morning Lisa handed me an envelope. She dropped this off, she said. Eyebrows pinched. Didn't even ring the bell. Just left it. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. I didn't read it. I folded it and shoved it into the back of the drawer, where Tyler kept expired coupons and takeout menus. She wanted attention, even if it was through pity. She didn't get to have that anymore. A few days later, I had my first meeting with the lawyer. Her name was Teresa, mid-40s. Sharp eyes, straight shooter. She listened quietly while I laid it all out. The lies, the emotional distance, the night at the bar, the messages. Then she looked at me and said, "You've already made your decision. What you're asking me to do is just paperwork." And she was right. The hard part wasn't ending the marriage. The hard part was accepting who she really was, because I had built her up in my head for years. Victoria, the loving wife. Victoria, the brilliant business partner. Victoria, the friend who laughed at my dumb jokes in the kitchen while cooking pasta. But none of that mattered now, because she was the same woman who looked me in the eye for months. While planning a second life behind my back, I signed the initial papers that day. It felt cold, clinical, not at all like the dramatic movies make it seem. No tears, no big speeches, just pen on paper. But as I walked back to my car, something inside me let go. Not all at once, but a corner, a piece. That night she called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. She sounded tired, not crying, just drained. "You really filed?" "Yes." A pause. "Then so that's it." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "That's what you chose." And for once she didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't spin the blame. She just whispered, "Okay," and hung up. And in that silence I knew something had shifted. She wasn't chasing anymore, because she finally understood I was already gone. The morning after she hung up, I woke up without that crushing weight in my chest. For the first time in what felt like months. No tight jaw. No instinct to check her location. No imagined arguments playing on repeat in my head. Just silence. Clean, honest silence. I got out of bed, took a shower, cooked eggs, read the news. And for the first time since this whole thing started unraveling, I caught myself humming while making coffee. Something stupid and light. A tune I didn't even recognize. But it was mine. That moment was mine. Free from her. From Bradley. From the mess. I didn't hear from her for 4 days after the call. Then came the voicemail. 3 minutes long, her voice shaking but no tears. No apologies either. Just a monologue about memories. The trip to Charleston. The weekend at the cabin. The time we almost missed our flight, because I insisted on getting pancakes at that diner by the airport. She was trying to pull me back through nostalgia, trying to reframe the picture. But what she didn't realize is you can't weaponize the good times. After you've poisoned them. That's not how memory works. Her voice on the recording didn't sound like my wife anymore. It sounded like a stranger wearing her past. I didn't delete it. Not yet, but I didn't replay it either. That same day, I got a message from one of her coworkers. Morgan, ironically. The one who was always having birthday dinners. Morgan wrote, "I'm sorry I didn't know how bad it had gotten. I just want to say you deserved better. We all saw things we probably should have questioned earlier. She changed a lot." I stared at that message for a long time. It wasn't much, but it was something, proof, in a way that I hadn't made this up in my head. That it had been visible, that I wasn't crazy. And somehow that meant more than anything Victoria had said. Later that night, Tyler asked if I wanted to grab a drink. We hit a quiet spot on the edge of town. One of those old places with wooden floors, and a bartender who probably knew your dad. We sat at the bar barely talking, just sipping whiskey and letting the night settle around us. Then Tyler said, "You know I hated her for you long before you realized you needed to." I turned, "Why didn't you say anything?" He shrugged, "Because you weren't ready. And if I told you, you would have defended her." He was right. I would have. That's the thing about love. Real love. It makes you blind to patterns and red flags and cold shoulders. It makes you fill in the gaps with hope. It makes you protect someone even when they're the one tearing you down. But I wasn't that man anymore. We sat in silence after that. Let the whiskey work its quiet magic. On the drive home, I looked at the houses on the street. Lit windows, porch lights, families eating dinner or watching TV, and I realized I wasn't jealous anymore. I wasn't aching for a life that looked whole on the outside, because I had already lived inside that illusion, and I knew how quickly it could rot from the inside out. The next morning my lawyer called, said Victoria's lawyer had responded. She was willing to cooperate. Translation. She knew she had nothing to stand on. No leverage. No way to spin this into sympathy or negotiation. She wanted out clean. Just like that. No fight. No last battle. No courtroom drama. And weirdly, it made me angrier than if she tried to fight me. Because it really meant nothing to her. 5 years, and she folded the moment she realized I wasn't begging. Not even a counteroffer. Not even a request to talk through it again. Just surrender. Like I had been a placeholder until something more exciting came along. Like our marriage was a lease she forgot to renew. I walked out into the backyard, into the cold sun, and sat on a plastic chair with my hands in my lap. She was gone. Not leaving. Not threatening. Not halfway in. Gone. And that finally was something I could build from. The divorce process moved faster than I expected. Maybe because there wasn't much left to fight over. No kids. No house in both our names. Just the business. And by the time her lawyer sent over their terms, even that had been gutted. She agreed to walk away from it entirely. Said she didn't have the emotional bandwidth to stay tied to something we built together. The irony was suffocating. She had the emotional bandwidth to carry on an affair, to build an entire second persona, to live a double life, but not to face the consequences of what she destroyed. I didn't even flinch. Let her walk. Let her take her curated Instagram feed and her new haircut and vanish into whatever version of herself she thought Bradley would love, because I had no interest in holding on to anything she touched. The days were getting colder. I moved back into my own apartment across town, a place I hadn't lived in since before we were married. It still smelled faintly of old carpet and lemon cleaner, but it was mine. The walls were bare, the furniture sparse, but when I sat down I could breathe. No perfume lingering in the air, no secrets sitting in drawers, no lies humming under the surface like low-voltage static. One evening I came across an old photo of us on my Google Drive. I hadn't meant to open it, just stumbled on it while trying to send a file for work. It was taken at the cabin upstate. I had my arm around her, and she was leaning into me with her whole face turned to mine, smiling like I had the sun in my pocket. I remember thinking then that she was my home, that she was the safest place in the world. Looking at it now, it felt like watching someone else's life, not because I didn't remember it, but because I no longer believed in the story behind it. How long had she been pretending? Had she started lying after that photo or before? That question clung to me like a shadow. I wanted to erase it all. But memories don't have off switches. They cling. They fester. They morph. Later that night, I got another message. Not from her this time. From Bradley. Didn't mean for things to go down like this. Thought you should know I didn't pursue her. She came to me. I stared at that line for a long time. Didn't know what to make of it. Was it an apology? An excuse? A pathetic attempt to absolve himself? I didn't reply. There was nothing he could say that mattered now. He wasn't the villain. Not really. He was just the option she reached for. When she stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as furniture, it was her choice. Every time, She chose to protect her little thrill over our shared life. Chose flattery over loyalty. Chose attention over real love. Chose lies over the truth. Every single time, and now she was alone with it. Or maybe not. Maybe she was still with Bradley. Maybe they went out for dinner now and talked about how tragic it all was. Maybe they convinced themselves they were misunderstood, star-crossed, justified. Let them, because I was finally past the point of caring who she was with. She wasn't mine, and thank God for that. In the weeks that followed, I started getting messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Hey man, just saw your name on the business paperwork. What happened with you two? Saw Victoria's pages wiped? You guys good? She always seemed off to me. Glad you're out. It was wild how many people had seen the cracks, but never said a word. Maybe they thought I wouldn't believe them. Maybe they thought I was too deep in to hear it. Maybe they were right. But it didn't matter now, because every message was another little piece of confirmation that I had done the right thing, that walking away wasn't weakness. It was the only strength I had left. Then one afternoon I got a delivery. A box with her handwriting on the label. I nearly sent it straight back, but I opened it. Inside were a few books, a hoodie of mine she used to steal, a small framed photo from our wedding, wrapped in paper towel like she didn't even care if the glass broke, and a note. Didn't know what to do with these. Figured you might want them. Hope you find peace. She signed it with just her first initial. No love. No always. No closure. Just a cold, careful V. I threw the note in the trash, dropped the hoodie at Goodwill the next day, but I kept the photo. Not because I missed her, because I wanted to remember what it looked like, to believe someone completely, and what it cost me. The final hearing was scheduled on a Thursday. Cold gray morning. Nothing dramatic, just paperwork. A judge, and two people who used to be everything to each other, sitting on opposite ends of a sterile room, waiting to be untied by law. She was already there when I arrived. Hair straightened. Neutral outfit. No emotion on her face. Just that blank expression I'd seen more and more in the last year. The mask she wore when she wanted to seem unaffected. She didn't look at me. Not once. And I didn't care. The clerk called our names. Ushered us through. And just like that, 5 years of love, lies, laughter, betrayal. It all got reduced to docket numbers and legal statements. The judge barely looked up. He flipped through the documents, read the terms out loud. Like we were settling a property line dispute and not a collapsed life. When he stamped it, there wasn't a sound. No gasp, no tears. Just the quiet, deliberate thud of finality. It was over. We stood up, gathered our things. I didn't expect her to say anything, but she did. Just as I was turning to leave. Nathan, she said, soft. A little too soft. I stopped but didn't face her. I meant some of it back then. I turned slowly, looked her dead in the eyes. Then you should have fought for it. She opened her mouth to say something else, but I didn't wait. I walked out of the building and into the wind, not looking back, because the truth was, I didn't need to hear what she meant, or when she meant it, or how sorry she was. She had every chance to mean it when it counted. And she didn't. I got in the car and sat there, with my hands on the steering wheel. No shaking, no numbness, just quiet. And then without even thinking, I drove. Not home, not to Tyler's. I drove past our old neighborhood, past the park where we used to walk the dog we never ended up getting, past the coffee shop where we had our first real fight, and made up an hour later over croissants. And then I stopped at a red light, looked over at the passenger seat, and realized for the first time it didn't feel empty. It felt free. I was free, not from her, from the version of me that tolerated her, the man who swallowed his doubts, who ignored the signs, who waited for her to come back when she was already gone. That guy was gone. A few days later, I did something small but symbolic. I changed my number. Not out of fear. Out of control. Because she didn't get to pop back into my life 6 months from now. With a just thinking of you message. She didn't get to linger in the corners of my phone or my mind. She was done. Blocked. Buried. I made a list that night. Not a bucket list. Not goals. Just reminders. What I will never tolerate again. Being treated like an option. Being lied to and then made to feel guilty for asking questions. Being loved only when convenient. Being gaslighted into thinking respect is negotiable. And at the bottom I wrote, I don't need closure. I need clarity. And I finally have it. It was the first time in a long time I felt like myself again. Not a husband. Not a victim. Not a broken man. Just Nathan. And that was enough. The strange thing about healing is that it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show up one morning with fanfare or banners, or some deep cinematic monologue about moving on. It comes in pieces. Quiet moments that slip past unnoticed. until suddenly you realize you didn't think about her all day. One morning I woke up and realized it had been over 2 weeks since I'd said her name out loud. The apartment started feeling like mine. I got a new couch, put up a couple prints on the wall, started cooking again. Real food, not just takeout or cereal at 2 a.m. I picked up jogging, not because I was chasing some dramatic post-divorce transformation, but because I liked the feeling of movement, the beat of my shoes on the pavement, the wind cutting across my face, the way I could leave every thought behind with every step. There were moments I'd catch myself laughing at something dumb on TV and realize I hadn't thought about her in hours, and those moments were golden. Then came the call I didn't expect. It was from her mother. I recognized the number, but I let it go to voicemail. When I listened, it was just her voice. Tired. A little shaky. "Nathan, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I don't know what she told you, but I know you didn't deserve what happened. You were good to her. You really were. I know that." I sat there holding the phone in my hand, long after the message ended. Her mother had always liked me. We'd shared recipes, joked about bad holiday wine, even cried once on the back porch after a Thanksgiving dinner, when her husband had said something cruel and no one called it out. And now she was the one apologizing to me. The next day I called her back. We talked for 10 minutes. She didn't defend her daughter. She didn't ask for details. She just said, "You deserved better," and then told me she hoped I found someone who didn't make love feel like a battle. After I hung up, I realized something else. Victoria had lost more than just me. She'd lost the version of herself people could root for. She'd lost respect, quietly, gradually, but completely. You can't lie and manipulate your way through people's lives without leaving a trail of ruined trust behind you. And eventually, no one follows that trail back anymore. Later that week, I went out with some friends from work. Just a casual dinner. No drama, no pressure. But I caught myself actually present in the moment, laughing, telling stories, making fun of Rob's weird obsession with trivia night. It felt easy, light. One of the women there, Ava, asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. Not a date, just two people talking, and I said yes. Not because I was ready for anything, but because I wanted to say yes, and that felt like progress. After dinner, walking back to my car, I passed a bookstore and saw a copy of one of Victoria's favorite novels in the window, the one she always said changed her perspective on love. I laughed out loud, because the idea of her lecturing anyone about love was now so absurd it barely seemed real. That night I opened my laptop and deleted the last folder with our pictures in it, not out of spite, not out of hate, but because I didn't need to hold on to who we were, because who we were had nothing to do with who I am now. She used to tell me I was too sensitive, too soft, that I took things personally. But she never realized those weren't weaknesses. They were the exact things that kept me human. While she was turning herself into a storm of excuses, and distractions, and half-truths, I loved her fully, honestly, and that's not something I'm ashamed of. It's what sets me free. She's just a chapter now, a badly written one with a sudden chaotic ending, and I don't need to reread it to understand how the story goes, because the man she left behind, he's not waiting for her anymore. I stood at the shoreline last weekend. Tyler had dragged me out of town for a few days, said I needed to breathe air that didn't carry the scent of old memories. We drove out to this cabin near the coast. No reception, no noise, just the sound of wind carving its way through the trees, and the crash of waves that had been beating the shore, long before either of us were born. The second night, I walked out alone. While Tyler and Lisa played cards inside, the sky was purple, the kind of color you don't appreciate when your head is filled with someone else's noise. And as I stood there, toes in the sand, cold wind on my face, I realized something I hadn't admitted to myself until right then. I'm not angry anymore. Not at her. Not at Bradley. Not even at myself. The grief had already come and gone. The anger, too. The betrayal still echoed from time to time, but it no longer sat on my chest when I woke up. It no longer whispered in my ear during the quiet moments. It was just there now, like an old scar, faded, painless, and no longer in need of picking. She texted me again last week from a new number. I don't know how she got mine. Maybe someone gave it to her. Maybe she found it through some desperate digital loophole. The message was short. I know I don't deserve it, but if you ever want to talk, I'm here. I stared at it, let it sit in my inbox for a while. Not because I was tempted, but because I wanted to feel nothing when I read it. And I did. I archived it, didn't block it, didn't respond, didn't feed the ghost, because she didn't deserve a reply. There's no closure to be found in conversations with people who only want to soothe their guilt, not your wounds. And I'm not in the business of healing people. who broke me without hesitation. You see, there's a strange kind of power in letting go, in not needing revenge, in not crafting the perfect speech in your head, in not hoping they suffer or regret or beg. There's power in moving forward so completely. They're left talking to the version of you that no longer exists. So if you're reading this and you're in the middle of it, the doubt, the pain, the nights you're wide awake dissecting every conversation, every missed sign, I want you to hear this clearly. It's not your fault. Their choices are not your reflection. Their disloyalty doesn't mean you weren't enough. Their lies don't rewrite your worth. You will breathe again. You will stop checking your phone. You will laugh and it won't be forced. You will forget what their voice sounds like in your dreams. You will find peace, not because they gave it to you, but because you earned it. As for me, I don't hate her. I don't love her. I don't miss her. I just remember her, and I remember what she taught me. That loving someone doesn't mean saving them from themselves. That silence is its own kind of answer. And that sometimes the most loyal thing you can do is walk away quietly, completely, finally, and never look back.